welcome to this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday Webinar Series. On behalf of myself, Eric Hansen, and all of us here at OTT.X, we're so happy you're joining us today. Whether you're watching live or on demand, it is, as always, a privilege to share with you the experience, insights, wisdom from people that are shaping the OTT CTV industry. It has been another explosive 12 months of rapid growth and dynamic change for the FAST industry. According to research from Omdia, revenues are expected to increase 22% year over year from $5.5 billion in 2023 to $6.7 billion in 2024, with an estimated 46% of online video users watching FAST channels in the country. Our presentation today is from Papercup and provides strategies for thriving in this rapidly growing sector in an in-depth analysis of FAST, featuring critical insights and intelligence for leveraging future opportunities. Discussion includes techniques for pinpointing regional demand for specific content, exploring localization methods that expand reach and deliver maximum engagement, and more. I am pleased to welcome to the OTT.X online stage Garrett Goodman, Papercup's Vice President of Sales. Welcome, Garrett.
Thanks very much, Eric. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great, as always.
All right. So why don't I
take it away?
Share my screen, and we will get this going. Okay, everyone. So the intel that you're going to hear today, it comes from people that are much cleverer than me. And I thought we'd start by just playing the faces game and seeing, can you recognize anybody on this? So at Papercup, we recently commissioned a report with Omdia, and it was a who's who of FAST that contributed. So we had people from the platforms, Pluto, Samsung TV Plus. We had some FAST forerunners on the channel side, like Fuse and Cineplex, and industry expert like Marian and Maria. So we're going to dive into those findings today. So let's take a little trip around the world together. We'll start in the US, then we'll go south of the border to LATAM, and then we'll hop the pond over to Europe, where I am. And I'm your tour guide today. I'm Garrett. You'll be traveling with Papercup. We are the ethical AI dubbing company. We've got lifelike AI voices that are perfected by professional translators and voice actors. And we've been covered in a few trade magazines that you might recognize, like those below. Some of you probably know Papercup. A few of you probably work with us already. All of you have probably seen this explosion in AI dubbing in the past year. So I wanted to give you a taste of just how quickly things progressed at Papercup. So what you'll hear here is our voices from just 6 months ago compared to the latest and greatest, the current state of the art. And at Papercup, our focus is on bringing emotional depth to synthetic voices. So listen in for that. This comes from our customer Fremantle and one of their flagship programs, which is Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, their talent suite. So here we go.
Big end game here for any artist like you has to be Vegas. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time on this. But this potentially could be amazing. This is exactly what the show should be looking for.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I love this audition.
La meta final para cualquier artista como tú tiene que ser Las Vegas. Así que tendrás que dedicarle mucho tiempo a esto. Pero creo que podría llegar a ser algo muy increíble. Y eso es exactamente lo que el programa debería buscar.
Vaya, muchas gracias.
Me encantó tu audición.
La meta final para cualquier artista como tú tiene que ser Las Vegas. Así que tendrás que dedicarle mucho más tiempo a esto. Pero creo que podría llegar a ser algo muy increíble. Y eso es justo lo que el programa debería buscar.
Vaya, muchas gracias.
Me encantó tu audición.
One of my favorite bits about working at Papercup is just how quickly things progress. So hopefully you were able to pick up, even if you're not a Spanish speaker, on how much more emotive those latest and greatest voices sound. So before we take off on our world tour, let's just cast our eyes on the horizon a bit. What we did here was we plotted the growth of FAST in the US over the past 6 years, and then we added where we see Latin America, Europe, and the rest of the world today. And it's safe to say that the US is a good 3 to 6 years ahead of the other markets. Now, obviously, the other markets aren't going to follow exactly the same trajectory, but the idea is, what can we learn about how the US is going now that we can apply to how the other regions are likely to mature? And let's take those next steps into the other regions with the benefit of hindsight, even if it's others who learn those lessons. So that's the aim for us today. Is I'm going to share an overview of each region and then some interesting things that we've seen others do in those regions to find success. So we'll start with the US. When you look at households using different types of streaming services, growth in SVOD is slowing while FAST is growing the fastest. This idea of subscription fatigue is nothing new. We've all seen it. We've been hit with it, and we've probably unsubscribed to a number of different services ourselves. But that is slowing down growth in SVOD. Meanwhile, FAST isn't just standing still. There's been this general increase in quality in the FAST offerings, which has driven a lot of audience. And as more audiences have flocked to FAST, a few things have happened. And it's actually led to quite a lot of channel churn. And if you look at it in the past year, a full 25% of channels in the US were churned. And interestingly, the churn is being driven by both content owners and the platforms. So here's a little story. I was speaking with one of the biggest digital media brands last week, and they had an initial FAST strategy of sort of maximum spread, right? But after the last year, they realized that the business didn't actually support the carriage fees for all of these different platforms. The maximum spread strategy was, let's get our channels up on as many platforms as will take us. So they, like most channel owners, have been actually dialing back their presence to just the key platforms with the strongest audience and monetization. So they are driving some of the channel churn because they're pulling down some of their channels from a number of platforms. And that, of course, makes the real estate more premium on the key platforms where everybody's chasing for a spot in the EPG. So that's how the channel owners are driving churn, right? The tier one platforms have been actively consolidating their lineup. And I heard this referred to as channel reduction by one platform at MIP TV. Every time I encountered them, I heard this similar line from different people within the company, representing different regions. They said, we found that the ideal lineup is 130 to 150 channels per country. Now, they have 200 to 300 channels in some countries. So you can imagine what's happening there. They're in a channel reduction strategy. They are lightly evicting the bottom performing channels. And it does make it harder to get carriage on these platforms. So you've got audience growth coming from a higher quality offering and new studios entering the mix and jumping into FAST. A quarter of the channels launched in the second half of 2023 actually came from the big US studios like Warner Bros, Discovery, A&E, MGM. So it's a lot of competition. It's one of the big challenges here. And despite all this growth in audience, we also know that the ad fill rates still remain low. The monetization isn't yet at the place where it should be, even if it's the most mature ad market out of all the places that FAST is live. So fill rates on average in the US are around 38%, which means, I'm sure you all know, but just in case, it means that for every 100 opportunities you have to show an ad on FAST, only 38 of those slots are actually getting filled. There's a lot of room for growth in increasing fill rates to drive more revenue. So amidst these challenges, what can content owners do? There's been an interesting move by Fuse Media, who's actually put together a network to represent the inventory of top players in the FAST space and go out and sell that directly. So as opposed to relying on programmatic fill rate like this 38%, they're going out and they are representing a number of big brands like Lionsgate, for example, trusted media brands, Tastemade, representing their ad inventory and selling it direct to the brands, which is resulting in stronger, more premium advertising and the revenue to follow. So that's one potential maneuver for you. Partner with a network that's actually investing in selling directly, as opposed to relying on a revenue share from the platform. Another idea is to actually get carriage by bringing proof points to the platforms. You know, if you have built out a large social following around your IP, then knowing you can come armed with that data to make a strong argument for why the platforms should be considering you for one of their few slots that are available for new channels this year. The other thing is you have to think about what the platforms actually value. They're also looking to acquire new users. So if you can say that your channel has a social presence with 2 million followers on YouTube, then they can see that as an opportunity to actually drive engagement, downloads, new users, and that makes your channel more valuable in their eyes. So one idea is to start with social. Another idea is maybe dip your toe in the water and not pursue a full FAST channel as your initial launch. See if maybe there's an opportunity to share a smaller load of the content as VOD, maybe into some of the platform's own channels, and then gather data on the engagement, and armed with that data, make the case for graduating to a full FAST channel. Now, there's some channels that have some serious limitations on rights and only can operate within the US, but there's still a big opportunity domestically in the US if you can identify the underserved audiences. This is one thing that Fuse is very good at, super serving the underserved audiences. Take a page out of their book. There's a mind-blowing stat that I recently discovered from CNBC, which is that if you separate out the GDP of US Hispanics, it would actually make up the 5th largest economy in the world. Larger than France, larger than the UK, larger than India. It is a massive audience that you could be localizing for and super serving with and driving new revenue even within your home market. All right, so we do see many jumping across the border into LATAM to get broader audience and drive more revenue as the US has heated up and become so competitive. And that shows in the numbers, right? The audience and monetization within LATAM are up in a big way. Amagi reported that ad impressions were up 173% and hours of view up 64%. So it's definitely maturing in Latin America. But there are still some challenges associated with this market. In particular, we know CPMs are lower than in the US. And overall, the ad market is less mature. So that, combined with the fact that there are fewer fast players in the region, which means fewer endpoints for your channels, does make it a tricky place. But we've got some insights to help you navigate that. Because the market isn't as mature, it does open up an interesting opportunity to be the first mover. So as Patrick at Fuse puts it, early movers will be able to establish brands as well as gather learnings to support growth and optimization. So when monetization matures, you've built an engine to maximize it. Another smart move has to do with which platforms you prioritize as a channel owner. You've got low CPMs as one of the challenges in LATAM, and that's compounded by low fill rates. But you also have some platforms that are fighting that fill rate challenge by actually going and selling ads directly instead of relying on programmatic. You remember in the US, the fill rate on average was 38%. Samsung TV Plus has said that they see around 20%, but as Alini here, who looks after LATAM at Samsung TV Plus put, they're growing advertising through direct sales. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind as you choose which platforms to partner up with. Think about whether or not they're also engaging in direct ad sales, because you might have a chance at stronger monetization that way. And it's also important to know which content gaps the platforms are looking to fill if you want to get carriage on those that you've decided to target. Here's a lovely quote from Alini. She posted on LinkedIn. Proud to have Samsung TV Plus highlighted in the recent Omdia report about FAST. Papercup has been a crucial tool for expanding our offerings in Latin America. Localization is not just a strategy, but a critical necessity to engage and expand our audience across the region. So in the report here, which there'll be a download link at the end I'll share with you, she gets into exactly what content preferences she has for the region. It makes such a difference when you actually bring an offering that you know they're hungry for. All right, so let's hop the pond to Europe then. There are almost 1,200 FAST channels across Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, run by 243 different channel owners. But one interesting point of difference in Europe is how much the broadcasters are focusing on building out their own streaming offerings. They're betting big on streaming as the way to engage audiences of the future. However, if you follow Marian Ranchett, then you'll know one of the tricky things with Europe is how developed the free-to-air offering is there, right? There are very viable free alternatives to FAST. And if you don't follow Marian Ranchett, you should probably get on that and go follow her. But overall, Europe is not a monolith, right? You need to think about first which market you want to enter in within Europe, because each country is at a different stage. Are you thinking short term and you want to only enter the markets where there's the most advanced monetization and revenue, like UK, Germany, and France? Because if you do, it's going to be a more crowded space, right? It's going to be harder for you to win audience, and you might need outsized marketing spend in order to cut through the noise there. Or are you looking ahead and jumping on an opportunity to get that first mover advantage and maybe going into a market like Italy, which is slightly less mature than the others? If so, you've got to recognize that your payback periods are likely to be longer there, but you'll be in a healthier position when those markets mature over the next few years. Okay, so you've chosen your market. Now you need to think about the different FAST platforms operating there. You've got the globals like Pluto, the OEMs like Samsung, You've got the locals like Freely in the UK, and keep your eyes out for telcos. They're spinning up fast offerings as we speak out in Europe, and that's going to be a very interesting addition to the landscape. So once you've chosen your market and your platforms, you need to think about your content mix as well. So the first gen approach to this kind of content strategy was basically be opportunistic, right? Use what content you already had localized to just get it out in market and get a presence there. And this is kind of perfectly exemplified by this quote from a Digital TV Europe article about BBC Studios and Top Gear. So I'm just going to read it because I think it's a great illustration of this first generation approach, right? In the German-speaking territories, the channel will showcase seasons 5 to 14 and 23 to 26. The channel in France will feature 9 to 27, whilst in Italy, the channel will include 2 to 25, all channels available with local language dubbing. You can imagine what happened there. They looked at their library, they saw which seasons they had dubbed for each market, and that's what they went with. But just like in the US, we're seeing a shift towards quality, right? And the European markets are getting more and more competitive. So the second generation strategy is to actually build a curated, dedicated offering, market by market. And that's one place that using AI dubbing might be the right move for you. So if you are looking for a way to fill out your content offering and jump in with these curated offerings, market by market, and you're looking for an AI dubbing provider to help you get there, we are already carried by all the tier 1 fast platforms. Our AI dubs are live, Samsung TV Plus, Pluto, VIX, etc. And we are the only enterprise-ready AI dubbing solution that is actually delivering this at scale with some of the biggest names in media, as you'll see from some of these logos, which I'm sure you recognize. But don't have to take my word for it. We've got a nice little video here of World Poker Tour explaining their experience in working with us. I'll go ahead and play a bit of that.
The quality of Papercup dubbing has been second to none. Hi, my name is Mark Dion. I'm the Director of Distribution and Ad Sales at the World Poker Tour. Over the last 22 years, World Poker Tour has put on poker tournaments around the globe and has created a TV show from that. And we also have our own gaming apps, Club WPT and WPT Global. We're on most major OTT platforms, especially with our free ad-supported streaming television channel, or FAST, and that is really available throughout the world. Localization is more than just pure translation. It's really taking into account the different cultural nuances that take place in language.
Sem perder pote relevante ainda.
The quality of Papercup dubbing has been second to none.
Dois sais? Na verdade, é Rei. Eu diria que foi uma boa primeira mão.
A big part of that to their expert translators that are going through and listening to make sure that, is this intonation correct? Is that the right inflection? Are we really capturing the moment?
There's a shot of Simon's family along the rail, calling him by his online screen name Shookum.
É apelido divertido para gritar da arquibancada.
When I think about World Poker Tour customers, especially the big major streaming platforms, they have real hard requirements as to how does the dub sound? Does it sound natural? Does it sound human? Is it going to connect with their audience, with our shared viewer, to be honest? And so we went to them, asked them, how does this sound to you? And when they gave us the thumbs up, that's when we knew we were ready to move forward with Papercup. Our team's process for localization prior to AI dubbing was pretty much the traditional model, going to a translation or a localization house. The cost that we had with our original process was certainly in the mid to 5 figures. And it was a long, I'd say almost arduous process because we had a 3 to 4 month lead time at best. Through Papercup, our time to market has certainly been cut in half, and cost has definitely dropped when compared to traditional localization. Some real benefits working with Papercup has honestly been the strategic collaboration. not only have they been a partner in creating new content for us in the form of localization, but also keeping us in mind with their business development efforts when they're speaking to different platforms and networks. Additionally to that, they're looking at our entire distribution strategy, which would include social media such as YouTube. It's been great working with Papercup, and we really look forward to working with them more in the future.
Mark's going to be speaking at Stream TV if you guys want to catch him. He's great. So I'll leave now with this link to the full report that this entire presentation was based on. There was a Q&A, a question in the chat about whether or not the deck will be available. Very happy to share it with you. You can email me, garrett@papercup.com. But this deck, this report here goes into great detail, much more detail than I did on this webinar. So thank you very much.
Hey, terrific. Thanks a lot, Garrett. We have to take some questions from our audience if y'all have some. I have some. First of all, let's go back to 38% fill rate in the US.
Kind of a scary figure, isn't it?
Astonishing. How, yeah. I mean, is that getting smaller over time? I mean, you would imagine, right? Or is that kind of where we're at?
I would hope that the fill rate is getting bigger over time.
Well,
right?
yeah, I guess the gap is getting smaller, right?
Yes, yeah. And selling programmatically, I think we're seeing more of a shift towards advertisers knowing that CTV exists, that that's where the audience is right now, and shifting their budgets from linear to digital. And so that is absolutely the promise that we're going to see that fill rate increase. But in the meantime, there's a lot of ad inventory to make use of. And that's why I think this move from Fuse is so clever, that actually, because they have a big paid TV background and have been selling their own ads directly for a long time, they're able to utilize those relationships and sell digital at a much higher rate and, for much higher CPMs as well.
Yeah, I mean, people could, obviously, y'all should show up to the X runs in a couple of weeks.
That's it.
That's what we're all about, is helping this industry make those connections and let the world know, let the brands and the agencies know the value of your content and of your viewers. Because as you mentioned, many of the channels that are in FAST are over-serving the underserved, and that can be a really valuable strategy for an agency and for a brand. Yeah, well, and what about CPMs? Are they generally a lot lower on FAST than in traditional broadcast and cable delivery?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare apples to apples because the inventory is not necessarily sold in the same way. But yeah, I think that across the board, you'll find linear is still seen as the most premium, but increasingly the CPMs, the amount that advertisers are willing to pay to reach digital audiences is improving, definitely.
I wonder if it's just awareness, on the part of the ad community, the buyers.
Yeah, and there's obviously a big shift in that a number of the SVODs have introduced ad tiers, right? So you expect that now Netflix is going out and helping to educate the market about the value of reaching their audience through advertising. So we expect that that's a tide that will raise all boats as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously going to be focusing on Netflix. So
yes, they will, but they'll also be generally educating the advertisers, and hopefully they'll just shift more budget into CTV.
Yeah, here's a question from Daniel Schneider. Thank you, Daniel. About the reporting that y'all have. Did you include AVOD as well as in calculating FAST watch time and audience growth? Obviously, AVOD is a ad-supported video. It's not FAST. It's not a program guide necessarily, but it's also ad-supported.
Thanks for the question, Daniel. And I'm totally with you. I wouldn't include that as fast. I think that they're two separate things. Tubi is primarily AVOD and has some fast offerings. But when we look at the reporting, yeah, it's important to differentiate between those, because fast is its own thing. There are platforms dedicated to it. And that's what we're looking at as we gather the data for this. And Omdia did the research.
Yeah, you recommended, one of the recommendations you had to kind of get your channels off the ground was to start with social, maybe something on YouTube or with a VOD offering. Might AVOD be an approach for that?
Yeah, so that is exactly what I meant by the VOD offering, is to jump in on some of these platforms, see if you can get a foot in the door by bringing a couple seasons of a show, or a couple tens of hours of titles that you might have available, and first getting carriage just on an AVOD basis.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're in their ecosystem, using that engagement data to then make the case to graduate up to a full dedicated channel.
Yeah, because you're not limited to that 150 channels in your program guide on AVOD.
Exactly.
But you do have the challenge of being found and discovered by an audience.
Which is a different challenge, but yes.
Yeah. But if that is kind of what you want to come to the channel or to the platform with. This is our audience. This is my 2 million YouTube subscribers. Obviously, I have an audience, and they found me. So that's and you mentioned a cost for channels to get on a platform, that it was just at some point cost prohibitive to go out and just be on everybody's platform. Why is that? What are the costs associated with getting your channel onto a platform?
So there are a lot of different tech providers that will connect your feed into the platforms, and they charge in different ways, but one of them is just a flat monthly fee, a connector fee for each endpoint that your channel goes to, each separate platform that your channel goes to. And so those fees can really stack up if you take this maximum spread approach. You've got one channel, you try and get across all the tier 1 platforms, all the tier 2 platforms. You're paying that monthly connector fee times 15, times 20, and there are many of those platforms where it's just not viable. They're not delivering enough revenue to even cover the cost of the connector fee. Right. And so channel owners are kind of wising up to that and starting to prioritize exactly which, a much smaller group of platforms that they know they want to get carriage on.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, right? Because that'll, ultimately then the platforms are competing against each other for channels, because not all the channels are going to be on all the platforms.
Absolutely.
The technology companies then are competing with each other to reduce costs. So it doesn't help them if everybody's bailing out because it's too expensive.
No.
And then the channels are motivated to find ways to reduce costs on their own side as well. Interesting. Yeah.
It's a complicated space to navigate right now, that's for sure.
And then as a viewer, then you got to try to find your content, right? So I mean, maybe I'm a
discoverability is still not ideal, right? The UI.
I mean, I've got a Vizio TV, and this is what I can see, and I can't see this content because it's on LG TVs, and I'm not going to go buy a whole new TV just so I can watch it. So I'm kind of cut out.
Yeah, for now.
We might see kind of the horse and buggy phase of this whole thing in a way, right?
And that said, people are making good money out there right now in fast.
Yeah,
and not just in the States, happening in these other markets as well.
Now, do you have to be a big player to make big money, or enough money to cover in fast? I mean, I'm imagining, like pretty low CPMs, and if you're not a big player, you don't have millions of viewers, can you get it to add up for a small operation that you can actually make some money? And plus it costs a bunch, right, to get it out onto the platforms.
Sure. There are definitely companies that are doing this. I know one sort of medium-sized distributor, medium to small-sized distributor, who had a channel live in Latin America and US, but in Spanish. And it's not one of the big studios, right? It doesn't have a crazy big brand name that's very customer facing. It had some good IP. It was a single IP channel. It was a factual channel, so like reality. And in their first year, they brought home over $250,000 from one platform.
Wow.
And then you think about, there's at least 5 tier 1 platforms that you could be distributing to in Latin America, and it starts to really add up.
Yeah, I think the strategies that you're bringing up, start with some good IP and a good platform that's going to help you get maybe some geographical coverage. Is that a thing where I'm weighing my opportunities? I think I have some good content. Don't have a gajillion different channels, but I've got some, and I'm going to try to maximize it. So I'll try to go out to a number of territories with it.
Yes, but going out to a number of different territories might have some serious cost implications, right? If you can go localize for a neutral Spanish, then that opens up a lot of different territories. Some of them will be more mature than others in terms of the kind of revenue you can expect back. So, if you're going to do neutral Spanish, ideally you've got some kind of mix in your distribution strategy between Mexico, LATAM, and also US Hispanic carriage. So if you look at Roku, for example, they've got something called Espacio Latino, which is their dedicated play in Spanish for US Hispanic audiences. So you want to try and mix it up like that. But, it's similar to that kind of first generation maximum spread strategy. If you try and take a channel into France and Germany and Italy and Spain all at the same time, unless you already have the dubs, that can be very costly.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's talk about that, the dubbing process. So going from version 1 of American Idol to the version 2, how long was the time in between? That's great. Yeah, it was incredible. I don't speak Spanish, but you really could. I mean, it was night and day. It's so much more enjoyable just to listen to the intonation in the second one.
Yeah, it's much more engaging, I think. And the thing is that that was the latest and greatest 6 months ago, and it sounded amazing compared to 6 months prior. It's just better and better and more human and emotive.
So that was about a 6-month difference. Yeah. What's driving that? How is it getting better?
So unlike a lot of the companies that have come on the scene in the last year, there's just been this explosion in AI dubbing. At Papercup, we have a core research team. We're filing patents and research papers and actually building our own voice engines. So it comes from the hard work of actually pushing the boundaries of what's possible by doing the research, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the other companies are leveraging other people's technology, and it's a shortcut to market, certainly, if you just assemble components that are available off the shelf, but it doesn't give you those big gains, and you're not a master of your own destiny as a supplier because you're relying on other people to develop the underlying technology.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But in the end, it's creating an audio file with a voice on it, with an audio track. I wonder, that obviously there's some voice talent, right, that is being engaged in that process.
Yeah.
Is there a time that you could see the audio engines being able to actually replicate the original voice talent?
So for us, we firmly believe in the human in the loop approach, right? It's crucial for our offering. It's what our customers expect. In order to reach that high quality bar, having professional translators QC that last mile, kind of fine tune and finesse the delivery of the voices, and also make sure that the translation, the adaptation is accurate. That is really important. But we have different speech engines at Papercup. So we've got a text-to-speech engine that we've built, which is really, really good at predicting what speech should sound like in certain genres. It's great for factual content. That's what we use for Bloomberg, for example. When we work on a lot of Bloomberg content, if you look at Bloomberg and Espanol, the YouTube channel, we run that channel and we localize those with our approach. Text-to-speech is a great engine for that kind of factual content. But then we also have speech-to-speech. And speech-to-speech is actually using a voice actor to perform a scene or a segment of a scene. And then they are using their performance to drive our synthetic voices. And so because we've built our own engines, we can use them together. And we can have one bit of content where we're swapping in and out the appropriate engine to reach that good balance of efficiency and scale, but still having that emotional depth and quality.
So do you ever foresee a time when you could use Simon Cowell's, some kind of a version of Simon Cowell's voice, whether it's artificially generated or sampled, and applying it then in a new language as a dub? So it could sound just like Simon is speaking Spanish, even though it's completely fabricated.
I mean, that technology is there. It's basically, you get into deep fake territory very quickly when you start to do those voice clones. And it's something that we, for mostly ethical reasons, just avoid doing the voice side of things. We're not here to dupe the audience. We're here to engage them and give them a great experience.
Right.
And the voices should kind of get out of the way, right? They shouldn't know that it's synthetic. Making it sound like Simon Cowell speaks Mandarin is definitely going to be jarring, right? So that's one thing. It actually gets in the way of the audience enjoying the content. And the other is it's not exactly honest. Obviously, he doesn't speak Mandarin, right? So there's that side of it, which is really important for us. And the other side is that we're here to streamline and simplify that whole dubbing process, localizing your content. And as soon as you introduce the need with a voice clone to get your on-screen talent to sign away the rights to their digital likeness in perpetuity, it's not streamlined and simplified anymore.
That's a really good point. Yeah. You're also, though, you're kind of contributing an artistic component to the work. Honestly, right? I mean, the way that the content, the dialogue, whatever it is delivered matters in the impact that it has, emotively, or whatever, even if it's Bloomberg, so
it's an interesting challenge.
How do you manage that? Like, does somebody say, this just is off, we're completely reinterpreting the way that this line is being delivered, and that's very qualitative, but I mean, you could have arguments about that for days. Eventually you have to kind of get things done, but I'm interested in that aspect. Is that something that happens at Papercup?
So we have a whole QC process, right? So we've got professional translators, professional voice actors who do that quality control before it ever gets back to the customer. So it goes through multiple layers of humans checking, does this sound right?
Yeah.
Make sure that is the sync on or off? Do we need to adjust things? Is the translation accurate? And that's the interesting challenge on our side, is we can depending on the customer type and the content type, we can invest our human capacity in different places, right? So you take Bloomberg, where for them, not particularly emotional content, they don't require much voice acting, right? In the speech-to-speech model. But the translation is paramount. You cannot get a Bloomberg video mistranslated because the risk is huge, that you could move global markets with something that's translated. So
yeah, that's
for
true.
them, there's more investment on the translation side with the human input than on the performance side. And so it really varies from project to project. But to answer your question, we've got those quality checks internal. And then if we receive feedback that's more subjective, we would have preferred it to sound a little bit more this way. Our revisions, unlike traditional dubbing where you've got to call a voice actor back into a studio, our revisions look like this. They happen on a keyboard. So it's much more cost effective, time efficient, all of that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to see where you're going to be in another 6 months. You have to come back and we'll listen to version 3.
Happily. I'll happily come back. We'll do it again.
Hey, thanks tons, Garrett and Papercup. It's super exciting, and I also really appreciate your sharing your take on FAST, how to get a FAST channel out there, and some ideas for what we can all think about in just our business in general. So thanks again, Papercup and Garrett Goodman, and thanks to all of you, our dear audience, for attending, for your continued support of OTT.X. As always, the session was recorded, and it's going to be available on our website at OTT.X.org later this week or early next, as well as an impressive collection that we've amassed over the last few years of presentations from our online and in-person events for the last few years. Do check those out. Quick reminder to everyone about our upcoming flagship in-person conference, the X Fronts. It's being held on May 21st and 22nd in Los Angeles. It's where everyone in the OTT and CTV industry, from ad agencies, platforms, channels, content providers, and technology companies, are gathering to learn about the latest trends in ad-supported video, share insights about the streaming industry, and learn about the latest content offerings from a wide range of platforms and channels in the AVOD and FAST business. Do check that out. It's filling up, so you'll want to register soon. It's going to be a great event this year. Got a lot of buzz about it, and we're all really excited. It's free for OTT.X members, which is a fantastic reason to become one if you're not. And if you would like to learn more about that, head out to OTT.X.org, and we'd love to connect you with some information to help you become a member of OTT.X soon. Well, that concludes our webinar today. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for being a part of the OTT.X community. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you, everyone.